All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is our first panel out of two happening for our last market session. And this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about from efficiency to renewables. What does the next decade of energy look like? Please welcome our moderators, Sophie Randall, Innovation Lead for Mobilities and Cities at Innovate UK. And then next, our panel, Danushka Tenakun, founder and CEO of RE24 Limited. Karen Bach, Chair of the Board at Measurable.Energy, and Siwa Cheng, Head of Product at Hydrologic. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Sophie Randall. I am an Innovation Lead at Innovate UK. For those of you who don't know, Innovate UK are the UK's innovation agency. We have a fairly new mission. It is to advance knowledge, to improve lives, and to drive growth. And I'm sure you can agree it's a very valuable and important mission that we can all go along with. As was previously mentioned, the UK and Singapore have got a very long, ongoing and long-standing relationship. And we're really grateful to the Singaporean ecosystem for their welcomeness, their openness, and their willingness to collaborate. For the last few years, we have run a clean tech incubator to Singapore, where we have carefully selected some incredible companies with potential growth to come along to Singapore and explore the market and connect with other innovators within Singapore. Our current cohort are on their second visit here. We're here all week. We have invited them to participate in two panel sessions. So we'll have this one first, and we'll have our second bunch of innovators afterwards. Before I start with the questions, if something does pique your interest today and you want to ask the founders something about their technology, you want to find out more, we do have a stand just in front of the registration, directly in front of me, SO1. So again, please do come along if there's questions you have or you want to speak to us, be welcome to have you there. So for our first panel, we'll be talking about what is shaping the future of energy. So let's get right in. We'll start with a big picture view. So looking ahead to the next decade of energy, there's lots of different forces and changes at play. So from your perspective, what do you think will drive the biggest change in the global energy landscape in the next decade? Do you think it will be stronger climate policies, changes in how business and consumers use energy day to day, or changes to the technologies that we use? If I could come to you first, Karen.
Hi, thank you. So I think there's a couple of, well, there's many things. All the things you just said are relevant. The big things in the UK is around demand response and flexibility. So I believe our peak use of energy in the UK is around 50 gigawatts or 55, I think we're at. And around half of that, nearly all, like 24, 25 gigawatts now, we can put in storage and get flexibility. And that's huge. The fact that we can, when it's windy, store it, that's really good. So the wheels are in motion for that. I was chatting with someone this morning who was actually working with a quantum company to help energy companies to better distribute that energy. So not just optimize where we're getting it from, but actually deliver it in milliseconds and not wait half an hour to be able to adapt to things. And so I think the generation is really changing and we're stepping up. I have to say, I live in France, I work in the UK. The French are actually really good at clean energy. And the UK were a little bit behind. The other side, another hat that I wear is in the data center world. As you are all aware, data centers consume huge amounts of data and it's crazy. And what I'm seeing there is the next generation computing will change over the next 10 years, and we will get the same compute power for far, far, far less power in the next 10 years. And I'm hoping that comes soon.
Brilliant, wonderful answer, Karen. Dan, from yourself, what do you see is changing in the next decade of energy?
Yeah, thanks. Picking up where Karen stopped there, we at RE24, we get 24/7 hourly matched renewable energy for data centers. And then from our experience, what we see is that is that there's a huge increasing demand in localized energy. What do I mean by that is that previously when we look at the large energy consumers, likes of the food and beverage manufacturing companies, pharmaceutical companies, we talk about, I mean, if we put the numbers forward, we talk about 10 megawatts or 20 megawatts power at tops. But right now what we see is that the sector is going towards, at single location, we look at 400 megawatts or even up to 1 gigawatt of power. That's a huge demand at a single location. And that we haven't seen before. And the next 10 years it's coming. In order to cater that demand, what we see is that the new technologies comes in. So things like the small modular reactors. I mean, a lot of people talk about SMRs. And when you look at the UK, there are SMR pilots happening, even though it might not happen in the next 5 years, but next 5 to 10 years, we'll see the first pilot projects happening in the UK, in the US, and in other geographies as well.
Brilliant, very exciting. And Siwa, yourself, how do you see the next decade of energy changing?
Thank you. So yeah, both speakers sort of talked about data center. So I guess I'll just have to kind of build upon that. So I think at the global level, the two main drivers are going to be, yes, the increased demand for energy to, to power the data center from the private sector, but also from the government. There is going to be a need for national or regional, energy security. At the same time, the price of renewable energy is going to keep decreasing. So I believe it's just going to be down to how much we can leverage storage technologies such as large-scale battery or even hydrogen to provide a reliable, supply for the increasing demand. Some other breakthrough technologies may come along, but I think those are going to take a few more years or maybe beyond a decade. So in short, it's going to be, increased demand, increased level of resilience, supported by innovation in, I think, mainly existing technologies like storage and infrastructure development.
Excellent. So we've heard a lot there around, the concerns around security. There's the impact of price. And with that, we'll also get a lot of new technologies, which is both exciting but intimidating. But I think the key thing we got out of there was there will be that huge increase in demand globally. With that, we already have a lot of proven clean energy solutions, and yet sometimes the uptake, the adoption can be slow to happen. Can each of you please share with me where you see the bottlenecks within your industries, which is preventing that adoption from happening at a faster pace? Siwa, if I can come to you first.
So at Hydrologic, our product is an operation system for hydrogen. So that means we are in a privileged position to get a view of, the entire hydrogen supply chain. So I can share with you my perspective based on what is happening in the UK in terms of green hydrogen. So the UK government, subsidizes production of hydrogen through what is known as the hydrogen allocation round. So that brings down the cost of hydrogen production quite a bit. But any suppliers, any producers are going to tell you that unless the cost of transport, the cost of infrastructure is going to come down, the market price of hydrogen delivered to the end users is going to remain high. And when we talk to the end users, as they're moving from trials to real-world deployment, those projects will no longer be funded purely based on sustainability. So the price of hydrogen has to come down, and if it's not coming down fast enough, then the government needs to, incentivize demand to drive market efficiency. So in the end, it's all down to the economics, and that's only possible via the right amount of, via investment throughout the supply chain and the right level of government policy support.
Brilliant. So some notes there around the economics and policy required. Karen, yourself, where do you see the bottlenecks within your industry?
So measurable energy, what we do is very simple, but actually we suffer from the fact that we're so good at it. And it's really that simple. We make power sockets. They go in a wall, you plug in your device, we recognize what that device does, we monitor the usage, and then we start turning it off. And we save you tons of energy. I once sat with the head of innovation of a very large property company in London, own a lot, billions of property in the UK. And he said, I don't believe you. And actually, from a client point of view, our biggest issue is someone says, that's not possible. And we go, well, it is. We've just saved them 40% of their energy of their whole office. Why don't you believe me? So it's that we're disruptive, and it's the lack of belief. And also with clients, it's around, they expect, if I've got a sustainability investment, it's going to be millions and millions, and I've got to go up into my committees. You don't need to. We've got a very instant product that can be working for you tomorrow. And again, people don't believe us. And I'm just going to add one other angle to that. Again, and probably every startup here has got this issue. When you talk to an investor, and forgive me, the investors in the room, like clients, everyone wants to put you in a box. And actually, we have hardware, but we've also got a subscription, so we've got recurring revenue, and we've got long-term contracts. We talk about TCV in the company. So if we go to an investor and I say we make sockets, I can instantly see some investors go, we don't do hardware. So it comes back to being new, and nobody quite knows what to do with you.
Thank you, Karen. Some interesting points there around the societal readiness and behaviour change also needed around the energy transition, which, yes, I believe is crucial too. Dan, yourself, where do you see the bottlenecks currently?
Yeah, I mean, if I slightly spin that question into like not the bottlenecks in terms of where we see the opportunity to accelerate it further, is that two main areas, I think. It's definitely on the cost reduction and on the regulation aspect. So if we dive into cost reduction, we see real life examples of it. For example, we work with Keppel data centers on decarbonizing their European data center portfolio. We got the first renewable project for them from a solar project, and they have seen the first-hand experience of how it reduced their cost. So on top of sustainability, on top of being green, it reduced their cost base, so which prompted them to do the second project out of that, and then end up doing the third project, and then we end up doing the fourth project. So essentially, that's a clear example how the cost reduction helps to make further deployments. And then in Keppel example, they brought their 2030 100% renewable targets 5 years ahead. So that's a clear example in there. And from the regulation wise, again, it massively helps. For example, if you look at the larger companies, any large companies has to disclose their emission targets, but the emission reductions. And then because if we are Singapore Stock Exchange listed or the London Stock Exchange listed, etc. So when companies are required to do that, so then they take action, and then that moves the market afterwards. So regulation gives the initial push, and then the market follows it afterwards. That's how I see it.
Brilliant, thank you all. So a real range of economic, social and policy challenges that need to be overcome. But if we do manage to overcome all those challenges, which will be a great success, what do you think will be the real measure of progress in the next decade? What do you see being that true indicator that we've reached the stage that we need to be at? Karen, if we can come to you first.
I think I'm a data person. I love using data. I'm covered in wearables. But I do feel guilty. And I feel guilty when every time, like this morning, I used Claude at least 10 times, and I'm going, I know there's some AI computers out there burning a lot of CO2. So the KPI on generation is really the grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. I think that has to be the KPI that we're all focused on. In the UK, I think in the last 4 years, we've already gone from over 400 to 124, somewhere around there, which is amazing. I'm really proud of the UK that we've done that, and we're aiming to get that down to 50. That said, I live in France. France are already at 21. So I think that has got to be the focus. And as we're also using more and more power as well, I think it's a harder challenge. That said, with my data and everything else I do, every company I'm involved with, I think we all need a little KPI of our product. What's the CO2 grams per that product? And if we were all watching that, actually, I think we'd made huge strides.
Brilliant. So having that true understanding of what we're creating. Dan, yourself, what do you see as the real measure of progress in the next decade?
Yeah, what we see is that, I guess everybody sees that, obviously, is that everything is getting electrified. Whether it's transport, the heating, the cooling, everything's getting electrified. And the more and more electricity that we use, the more demand it creates. But also, what we see is that with the increasing demand, we can get it fully decarbonized and then make it more affordable to everyone. So at RE24, what we believe is that affordable renewable electricity for all, so like affordable carbon-free electricity for all, and we really see that that's happening, and that's happening just around the corner as well.
Yeah, a really valid point there, Dan, about affordability and the fairness of energy. Great point. Siwa, finally, yourself, what do you see as the real measure of progress?
Yeah, so I'm I guess thinking more about the end goal, and I think renewable energy is going to be a given. So I think we progress I think is being made when we see that the conversations, the focus on what people are talking about shift from energy transition to that of energy optimization.
Brilliant. Very, very insightful. Well, that's all of our questions. If I could ask you to put your hands together and thank our panelists on this panel on energy transition. And again, please do come and visit us over at Stand 01.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that insightful panel. Now we have a second panel here this afternoon, and this is going to be on the topic of water, food, and oceans, turning resource constraints into opportunity. Now, before we kick off that second panel, I do want to ask, how's everybody doing thus far this evening? Good? Yes? I know we don't get a lot of cheers at the global stage. Can we get a little bit of a cheer here? How are we doing today? All right, I like this. Have you guys downloaded the Switch app? I know it's your most important app to download, right? It's the app that's going to let you know what all the market access sessions are about here. And have you been taking photos and videos thus far? Like Sophie right here is doing a phenomenal job as the moderator. Have you been tagging Sophie and Switch Singapore? No, you haven't? I'm looking at you right there. You got to take a photo of Sophie. She's doing a great job. And you got to tag her, right? And put you on Switch Singapore, right? All right. How about you little girls right there? Doing the photos? Doing the social media? Yes, sort of. Not too sure yet? We'll get you on board. All right, so are we ready to kick off our second panel? Let's do that. Once again, it's focused on water, food, and oceans, turning resource constraints into opportunity. So if you got a lot of topics on your hand, you're a very, very bright woman. Here we go. Anjali Devatsan, CEO of Atriva. Please welcome Anjali. Anjali, come on stage. Give her a round of applause. I'm going to do this. We're going to have some fun for this next introduction here. Dr. Pavlina Theodosiou, CEO and co-founder of MetZero Technologies Limited. I like it. And last but not least, Sharon Rachel Manu, Growth and Strategy Associate at Plastic Eye. Ladies, the floor is yours. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you very much. So yes, for our second panel of this afternoon, we'll be looking at how we can utilize waste streams and navigate resource constraints to create real value. Again, please do come and visit us at our stand if any of our innovators pique your interest or you want to ask them any more questions. We'd be welcome to have you there. So let's start with how our panelists are redefining value, how they are turning scarcity into systems of abundance. When we talk about sustainability, it's often framed around reducing harm. But how do you think that our industries, our cities, our societies can reframe their net mindsets about resources to unlock innovation at scale? Pavlina, if we could come to you first.
I go first. Thanks, Sophie. And that's a great question, because we are talking here about a mindset shift. And once we change the mindset from less harm to more value, that's when circularity comes into the conversation. For example, at Met Zero, we help beverage producers and water utilities turn their wastewater from a liability into a resource by unlocking ammonia and hydrogen from it. So every time the conversation starts with how can we get more value out of something that we regard as waste. And once we stop treating our natural limits as constraints, such as water, land, and energy, and we start seeing them as design briefs, that's when we start bringing into the conversation the value of the resources and the recirculation. And that's how we should treat our earth, as a regenerative, in a regenerative mindset. So yes, it is indeed a mindset shift and about building resilience in infrastructure, in the processes that we handle.
Yes, and beautifully put, that phrase there, nature as a design brief. It's a really, really nice and valuable phrase. Anjali, can you tell me how you believe we need to reframe our mindsets around our resources?
Thank you, Sophie. I completely agree with you, Pavlina. I believe that when we look at waste and resource limitations, we should really be focusing on them as design inputs rather than limitations. So, for example, there's an incredible untapped opportunity on the side of roads and highways, as well as within the tunnels in the MRT, and that's in the form of airflow. For example, when we speak with over 200 transport operators when we started Truva, we found out about the reliable power issues, as well as looking at how grid resilience and focusing on waste limitations was a real issue. And then through those learnings, we developed the Truva turbine, which provides that reliable power on the side of the roads and railways, as well as being able to generate that power from the airflow of passing trains. So now we've realized through this design and innovation that one of the greatest opportunities are right there in front of us in the form of waste and resource limitations. And I believe that's a key shift in mindset that's needed for cities and industries as well.
Thanks, Anjali. And yes, sometimes it's something that's right in front of our eyes that we don't even realize where there's value to it. Sharon, finally, yourself.
Yes. I'm grateful that Pavlina and Anjali here have covered the basic of all the points, because I completely agree with them. I think there is a strategic shift required in how we view our natural ecosystems. We are actually trained to look at built infrastructure like power grids and roads as critical assets that connect us, that drive our economies, and justify innovation and investment in them because they kind of drive our growth. But somehow we don't tend to see our natural resources like air, water, and forests in the same way, even though they actually sustain us and our industries. So I think the moment we place value on the natural resources like we do our built environments, innovation will really scale, because you're investing because you believe it's for growth and not to fix something. So even at Plastic Eye, which is my company, what we do is we use satellite data and AI in the water sector to give our stakeholders the most comprehensive view into what the water is, which is a growth lever and not something to fix later. So the moment you see these natural resources as, hey, if they grow, then we grow, and not as something to just tap into, I think that mindset shift can really unlock growth for the world. So yeah, I think that's the key strategic shift to be made.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sharon. And I think we all need to go and bang on for the dictionary definition of critical infrastructure to change to nature now. So with the sustainability space, it's often full of buzzwords and pledges, ambitious net zero targets, which are sometimes overly ambitious. So how do you cut through that noise and communicate real value? What do you think needs to change in order to help the public to distinguish between what is genuine innovation supporting the environment instead of greenwashing? Sharon?
That's a wonderful question, to be honest, because I think we often confuse communication with commitment. I think it's probably because the first 4 letters are the same. So that confusion is pretty natural. The goals that we have around are usually extremely ambitious, like becoming carbon negative by 2030. Sounds fabulous, but also maybe in most cases doesn't reflect reality as is. To me, the only real way of cutting through noise is to have evidence speak louder, objective, verifiable evidence that really displays what is improving, where and why it is improving. At Plastic Eye, that's our mission, which is to provide evidence for our stakeholders to demonstrate real impact. We actually recently worked with a global cleanup operator in the Gulf of Honduras to kind of evidence their impact. So we started by establishing a baseline of what the situation was before they kind of had that intervention, how much plastic pollution was there in the regions, in that region, basically. And then seeing, after that intervention, how much plastic was being collected. There was an actual reduction, and that is objective evidence. So that way, good intentions actually translate to credible progress instead of ambitious goals. So I think the way to cut through noise is to really demonstrate value, transparent value, and that way you're probably going to be louder at the end of the day.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sharon. And that's the second time within these 2 panels now that need for evidence and data has come up. So a really crucial need for that in our transition. Pavlina, can I come to you? How do you communicate real value to the general public?
Yeah, that's actually, I agree with my colleague Sharon here, because that's the experience that we had as well, engaging with end users and utilities. And when you take those adjectives and you translate them into outcomes, that's how people connect with them. But the other thing that I think Karen touched upon in the previous panel is that sometimes we use some words that they can deter some end users. And what I mean by that is, especially for clean tech, your main contact to a company is your innovation or sustainability team. And these are people who are really looking and seeking for disruptive questions, for disruptive technologies. And they're familiar with these buzzwords and terminology. But when you want to integrate the technology, you're speaking with the operator who, once they hear disruptive, they get scared, they're risk averse, they want reliable, safe solutions. So it's how also we change that language within organizations, not just with the public. And having small pilots with a baseline, starting from a baseline, having some solid, tangible and achievable KPIs, it's the way forward. And this is how we started engaging more with operators and setting up small pilots to prove and de-risk technologies.
Yeah, great answer, Pavlina. Another nod to that human element and that need to use language that everyone can adjust to and understand. Anjali, can I come to you?
Thank you. I completely agree with both of you. It's so much about not only setting goals, but having actionable data and quantitative results for these pilots, deployments, and taking real action. In terms of adding to that, I would also say we need to shift the perspective of sustainability as a marketing or PR perspective, and instead look at it as commercial benefit. We're seeing time and time again with our railway customers, as well as with roads, that resilience in terms of the grid, focusing on the energy generation that's reliable, upcycling materials, and looking at the life cycle analysis. These are key priorities because it solves real problems in the industry. From, for example, needing to power the EV charging at depots, to powering the cameras and sensors that are vital to the operations of the transport systems. So when we think about Triva, we don't want to only market it as a sustainable perspective. It's not marketing, it's solving the real problems in the industry. That is the key challenge. And so showcasing that as a commercial benefit from the customer base point of view as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, communicating that commercial impact alongside the sustainability impact. So if we come to our final question now, if there's one change that you'd like to see in how the world values and manages its natural resources, what would that be? Pavlina.
Mine actually is simple. Don't take them for granted. We only have one Earth and we act like we have three in the back room. What is that about? I mean, we need to treat our resources, our water, our land, the energy that we can get out of the technologies we have. We need to respect them. We need to understand that the resources we have in our world are finite. Most of them are running out really fast. And we need to adapt to circularity. And this is exactly what we do with MetZero. The way that we treat wastewater, and we have been doing it for hundreds of years, is very linear. Even though wastewater have 5 times the energy inside of it than what we used to treat it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to recover these resources that we can use to bring circularity. So we need to actually stop treating the Earth like we have an enormous amount of resources in it, because we actually don't.
Yes, definitely. Let's not take it for granted. Anjali, if there's one change you'd like to see, what would that be?
I think the number one thing would be look at resources and waste limitations as opportunities. There's so many opportunities in front of us, whether that be from water, from data monitoring, from all sorts of different opportunities that are in cities, industries, buildings. These can be benefited from, and we should really see that as an opportunity and to take creativity in as abundance.
Yes, limitations to opportunities. Very much agree with that. Finally, Sharon, can I find out from yourself what simple change that you'd like to see in how the world manages its natural resources?
I was actually looking around the room and seeing how people are moving from one sort of room to the next. And it kind of speaks to me that it's actually when we break down these silos that we kind of navigate from one room to the other, one technology to the other, and stitching them together is how we can actually make the best use of natural resources. To extend that thought, I would say that usually big ideas are spoken about in boardrooms and big conferences, but actually breaking that down and being inclusive and bringing local stakeholders into the game would be game-changing for us, because local communities are probably the first people to see impact on the ground and the best place to take the first step in action. And yet they probably don't have the most data and authority, influence for that matter. So I think knowledge and agency distribution across the board, not just in the top level rooms, but down under, just kind of making that inclusion vertical, I think will help us unlock a lot of resource use that is sustainable for us and for the planet. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sharon. And with the stitching together, obviously we have a room full of innovative people today. So we'd really like to stitch you together with our innovators too. So again, please do come and visit us at the stand. We'd really like to speak to you. And thank you. I hope that you really enjoyed our 2 panel sessions. If you could give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you once again. Big round of applause to our panelists here this afternoon. Thank you very, very much. And that concludes day one of Switch 2025 right here at the global stage. Hope you guys enjoyed these sessions throughout the day. A lot of insights, a lot of great information, and all that's continuing on day 2 tomorrow morning as well, and also on day 3. Now, I do want to let you know about the app. If you haven't downloaded the app to find out more about what's happening at Switch, please do so. We have it on the iOS and Android App Store as well, so you can do that. And also, we're going to put a QR code on the display. And this is for feedback. We want to hear from you. What do you think of Switch 2025 thus far? The global stage. What would you like to see more of happen here? What kind of conversations would you like to see? We'd love to hear from you, so we'll put that QR code on the display. If we could do that, that'd be fantastic. We'll get that on there, and we will get that feedback to you as soon as we can. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here, and I will see you bright and early. Here's the QR code. There it is. You can download the Switch app from there, share your feedback with us, all that great stuff. I will see you bright here tomorrow morning, bright and early, for day 2 at Switch 2025, right here at the global stage. I'll see you very soon. Take care.